there, Fantasy NASCAR owners. This is Sean, the Fantasy NASCAR ace with a hat, and I am here to bring you the first in a series of videos giving you weekly NASCAR advice for daily fantasy purposes. So, what can you expect? You can expect me to give picks, info, and all the tools you need in order to win big in your leagues. But let's get started. First of all, I'd like to go over some brief changes made to DraftKings. First of all, there's no more pass differential, and now there's also 6 drivers now on teams instead of 5. For all you DraftKings players out there, what does this mean to you? It means you should not focus on pass differential anymore. You should focus more so on finish differential and other qualities such as leading laps and overall finishing position. That's become more important now. Now, let's move on to the next category of basic track info. Now, Pocono has 3 turns, and all of them has different types of banking. But the one thing I want to point out with this factoid is that notably one of them is based off of a turn in Indianapolis, which means that Indy, which we raced on last week, is the closest comparison in order to actually figure out who is going to do well here at Pocono this week. It is very, very, very important to notice because you're going to see a lot of similar racing where there's going to be not too much passing, but the fastest cars will travel their way to the front. And this will lead right into my picks for this week. And I have quite a few picks to go through of who to use on your teams. And considering since the roster is now 6 drivers long, you guys should now think about using some of these guys here. First of all, I would like to acknowledge that Joe Gibbs Racing still is very, very hot right now. And you should most certainly use at least one of their drivers this week. For those of you that don't know who Joe Gibbs Racing is, it is Kyle Busch, Carl Edwards, Denny Hamlin, and Matt Kenseth. You should most certainly try to find some way to fit one of these 4 in your lineups this week. These drivers have shown strong consistency throughout the past few weeks, but if I had to spotlight 2 particular drivers on this team that you should most certainly use, it is Kyle Busch because, well, take a look at him. He's won 4 of the last 5 races, and that is, momentum doesn't get much higher than that. And he has shown pretty good consistency all throughout the last few weeks. And okay, he's shown good consistency throughout the last few weeks, as he's won 4 of the last 5 races, and that even includes tracks he's previously hadn't won at, which includes Indianapolis, which was his first victory ever at the track. So definitely use him if you can find some way to fit him in. As well as Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin, since 2005, has been the most victorious driver at this track, and he knows how to race here, he knows how to win here, and he really just knows his way around the track. It's one of Denny's best tracks. He's been so good here, and with the whole Joe Gibbs Racing consistency going on strong, you definitely should figure out a way to put him in your lineup this week. Now, like I mentioned earlier, a big thing that you're going to want to focus on going forward with daily fantasy is finish differential, and perhaps no bigger example will this be than Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson starts all the way back in 27th, and he has shown previous good history here before at Pocono, having one of the highest average finishes currently in the series right now. And also, earlier this year in the Pocono race, he went on to finish in 8th position, a top 10, and considering how he starts all the way back in 27th, that's going to balance out to a lot of fantasy points, almost as much as you might get with a driver that wins if he ends up finishing that high again, which I am totally expecting him to. So do look forward to him rising up through the pack, and he is going to notch down a very good finish this week. Find some way to use him, he's going to be good. Next up, I'm going to talk about some low-price drivers. Particularly, I'm going to be talking about Justin Allgaier and Landon Castle. Both of these drivers have a really low value, and lower priced drivers that happen to do well at tracks are not the easiest thing to come by, but these two are particularly good at Pocono for their value. Castle earlier this year ended up finishing in the 25th position, which, considering a driver his value, that is very, very good. He starts around 29th, so I'm expecting him to stay consistently up there and at least maintain himself to around the top 25 finish. Maybe even top 20 if he ends up actually moving his way up through the pack a little. And for a driver of his value, it is good for him to do that. And Justin Allgaier, he's in a similar situation, except he pretty much has been showing consistency more so throughout this track. Allgaier has constantly finished within the top 30, top 25, and sometimes even the top 20 at this track. So do find some way to use him, and his value is low, so he's a good guy to use if you want somebody to complete your team. Next up, I also want to talk about Kurt Busch. This is one of his absolute best tracks. He has the second most laps spent in the top 15 and the second best average running position here at Pocono. So really, there's almost no excuse to not thinking of using him in at least one of your lineups this week. He's a strong driver, he's going to deliver strong results, he starts 6th, and he's going to end up at least staying within the top 5. I am calling it now. He's going to give you points, and heck, maybe he may even lead a few laps while he's out there. And last but not least, what I do want to cover is Austin Dillon. Austin right now has 7 straight top 25s going on within the past 8 races. He hasn't finished worse than 19th at Pocono with an average finish of 17.0. He starts 4th, and if there is anything to note with starting positions that high, it's that drivers that start high at Pocono tend to finish around that high within Pocono. Kind of like what it was at Indianapolis last week with certain drivers. So I think Austin is going to end up staying up there. He's going to stay up there, and he's going to do well for you. So that's really about it. Find some way to use Austin. He has good value behind him as a mid-range driver, and I think he will be a good guy to help complete your team. So everyone, thank you all for watching this. And if you want to talk to me about more NASCAR picks and anything else NASCAR related, be sure to tweet at me on Twitter at Shawman247. From there, you can ask me about further advice, further picks, and anything else NASCAR related that you want to talk about with me. Thank you guys for watching this, and see you next week when we take on Watkins Glen. Hope you do well in your leagues this week, fantasy owners, and good luck!